She parked near her own home and ended up locked inside an HOA van like a criminal. Cold-faced enforcers Linda and Tom hid behind policy while ignoring her pleas for help. But when no adult stepped in, 12-year-old Jacob broke through the chaos, tearing the van door off with his bare hands to free his mother. The shocking standoff that followed and the justice that eventually crashed through would leave everyone stunned. The sun hung high, spilling warm gold over the sleepy cul-de-sac as Sarah pulled her hybrid into the driveway. Her trunk was stuffed with paper bags, milk, bread, cereal, strawberries for Jacob's school lunches. Arms full, she stepped onto the pavement. It should have been just another Wednesday. She was halfway to the front door when a voice sliced through the calm. "You're parked too close to the curb," it snapped. Sarah turned, startled. There stood Linda, short and wiry, her beige HOA vest worn like a shield of authority. She was already filming with her phone. Sarah shifted the bags, blinking in confusion. "This is our driveway," she said cautiously. "No red paint, no signs. We've parked here for years." Linda didn't flinch. "It's non-compliant with HOA Regulation 7.3.2. Sarah forced a smile. "I didn't know there was a new rule." "There was a notice," Linda replied, her tone flat. "Sent by mail." "Twice." There hadn't been, but arguing seemed futile. As Sarah stood there, keys in hand, bags drooping, a white van with the HOA logo rolled up. Out stepped Tom, stocky in mirrored sunglasses, clutching a clipboard. "We'd like to handle this amicably," Tom said, his voice aiming for friendly but landing off-key. "Step into the van, quick chat, some paperwork." 5 minutes. Sarah hesitated, her pulse quickening. Something felt wrong, but she'd seen HOA disputes spiral before citations, fines, even calls to employers. She just wanted it over. "Fine," she sighed. "Let me put these inside." "No need." Linda cut in smoothly. "It won't take long." Sarah turned toward the door, but Tom edged closer. "It's best to cooperate," he said softly, his words heavy, not a threat, but not a threat either. So Sarah climbed into the van's passenger seat. The door shut behind her. Click. She froze, tried the handle. Locked. She pushed again, nothing. Tom opened his tablet and started typing. Linda stayed outside, still recording. Upstairs, through the kitchen window, Mark was washing dishes. He glanced out and stopped cold. There was Sarah, palms pressed against the van's window, her face pale, lips moving. He couldn't hear her, but he didn't need to. Something was terribly wrong. Mark had just set a glass of water on the table when he heard the faint click. He didn't know what it was at first, just a small sound, but it drew his eyes outside. Sarah was trapped in the HOA van, slapping the glass. His stomach lurched. He bolted out the front door, barefoot, skipping the steps. "Hey! Let her out!" he yelled, charging forward. Tom turned slowly, raising a hand like a crossing guard. "Sir," she agreed to step in voluntarily. "We're processing the violation." Mark ignored him and yanked the door handle. "Locked." "She's trapped," he snapped, panic rising. Linda stood nearby, arms crossed, calm as granite. "She's not under arrest, sir," she said, like she was reciting a script. "We're waiting for local enforcement." "Standard protocol." "Inside the van?" Mark shouted. Sarah's movements grew frantic, pulling the handle, pounding the glass. Her muffled cries barely reached him, but he knew what she was saying. "Let me out." The sun blazed down, the van's black metal heating up like an oven. No air, no open window, just the awful sight of her trapped. Then a voice beside him. "Why aren't they letting her out?" Mark turned. Jacob stood there, barefoot in gym shorts and a rumpled tee, hair messy from sleep. His fists were clenched, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the van. Mark opened his mouth, but no words came. What could he say? He didn't know why this was happening, how it had spiraled so fast, or why the HOA was acting like a police force. But there they were, his wife locked in a van, a man with a clipboard blocking her freedom, and his son watching it all unfold. Time crawled. The street was quiet except for the cicadas. A dog barked faintly somewhere. Sarah kept pounding the glass. Mark grabbed his phone to call the police, heart racing. He didn't know it yet, but this was just the start. 15 minutes passed, 15 minutes of Sarah baking in the heat, Mark pacing the lawn, glancing at the street, watching her fists hit the window, hearing her faint, desperate voice. Then a squad car pulled up, no sirens, no rush. 2 officers in crisp uniforms stepped out like they were handling a minor complaint. Mark met them halfway, relief surging. Thank God you're here. They locked my wife in that van. She's trapped, overheating, they won't let her out. One officer nodded slowly. The other approached Linda and Tom, chatting casually as if discussing a mailbox dispute. Mark waited, expecting action, but the officer turned back. They say she entered voluntarily. No force, no weapon. No crime here. Mark's jaw dropped. She can't get out. They locked her in. She's not under arrest, the officer said flatly. This is a CIVYL matter, not criminal. We can't intervene. She's begging for help. Mark yelled, pointing at the van. Sarah's silhouette was still visible, slamming the glass. The officer glanced, then shrugged. We'll file a report. Sorry. Mark stood frozen, the world tilting. The neat lawns, the pastel mailboxes, the flag on their porch, it all felt like a lie. Jacob hadn't moved, staring from the officers to the van to his mother. Are we really just doing nothing? He asked, his voice too steady for a 12-year-old. Mark's hands shook. He'd always taught Jacob to respect rules, trust adults, believe in fairness. But now? Then Jacob stepped forward, slow and deliberate, walking toward the van. The air grew heavy, tense, like a storm about to break. Neighbors emerged on lawns, under porches, behind hedges. Some filmed, some whispered, all watched. In the center stood Jacob, barefoot, shirt sticking to his back in the heat. He moved with purpose. Mark wanted to stop him, to pull him back, not from fear of punishment, but from something deeper. Don't, he said, unsure who he meant. But Jacob kept going. His face was blank, not angry, not scared, just set. He reached the van's side door, gripped the handle, and pulled. Nothing. He tried again. Still locked. Mark stepped forward but stopped. This wasn't a tantrum. It was instinct. Jacob adjusted his stance, dug his feet into the pavement, and let out a raw scream. He yanked with everything he had. A grow metal protesting in a sharp crack. The crowd gasped. On the fourth pull, the door ripped off its hinges, screeching as it tore free. It hit the driveway and skidded, a twisted wreck. Heat poured out like steam, and Sarah stumbled forward, gasping, legs buckling. Mark caught her as she collapsed against him, her skin scorching, shirt soaked. She didn't cry or speak, just breathed. Jacob stood nearby, chest heaving, arms trembling. The crowd was silent, not from confusion, but awe. The officers froze. Linda and Tom stared, stunned. The broken door lay like a symbol of a shattered system. A neighbor's teen had been live-streaming it all, the police shrugging, Sarah's pleas, Jacob tearing through steel. By the time the door hit the ground, the clip was online, captioned, shared. Within hours it exploded. 12-year-old rips van door to save mom from HOA while cops did nothing. The internet erupted, Reddit, TikTok, Twitter, news outlets. By nightfall, their lawn looked unchanged, but inside, everything had shifted. Sarah sat on the couch, blanket around her, hands shaking. Mark stayed close, haunted by her trapped image. Jacob curled up in an armchair, quiet, exhausted. Are you okay? Mark asked softly. Jacob nodded, then shrugged. I just didn't want her to be alone in there, he said. Simple. True. That's why it spread, not the spectacle, but the love behind it. A boy who wouldn't let his mom scream alone while the world watched. The aftermath ignited fury. The video wasn't just shocking, it exposed indifference. The officer's shrugs, the HOA's coldness as Sarah sweltered, it fueled outrage. Stories poured out. Fines for sidewalk benches, threats over chalk drawings, citations for trash bins out too long. Experts called it unlawful detainment. Pressure built fast. 3 days later, the police announced an investigation. Linda and Tom were suspended. But the real fallout came from the people. HA meetings overflowed with fed-up residents, armed with evidence of years of overreach. Sarah wasn't the first, just the first caught on camera. 3 months later, a packed courtroom buzzed. Reporters, cameras, supporters with Jacob shirts filled the space. Mark and Sarah sat together, her hand in his, her mind still half in that van. Jacob, in an oversized shirt, watched quietly. The DA charged Linda and Tom with unlawful detainment and abuse of authority. The video played Sarah's hands on the glass, Jacob's raw strength. The jury took 2 hours, guilty. Probation, community Sarah VYC, a permanent ban from HOA roles. Then came the audit, fines, kickbacks, buried complaints. The HOA board collapsed. The ripple grew. HOA reform bills sprouted statewide. On the courthouse steps, amid flashing cameras, A reporter asked Jacob, "How does it feel to be a hero?" He looked down, then up. "I didn't mean to be strong. I just didn't want my mom to be scared anymore." The crowd hushed. The clip hit harder than any verdict, a boy who acted when adults wouldn't. Life moved on. Sarah gardened again, healing slowly. Mark took a closer job, wary of the world's fragility. Jacob stayed. Jacob video games, cereal bowls, a quiet steadiness in his eyes. In their garage hangs the bent van door, not a trophy, but a reminder. Ordinary people can break extraordinary wrongs. Sometimes it takes a child to show what courage really is.